Yo, what's up? What's up, Dumelang? Good morning, everybody. We just came from a very exciting heritage weekend, but today is not very exciting, I think, for many people. The people of the Western Cape are suffering terrible weather there. Ourselves too, it's very cold. So, but we'd like to keep high spirits, so that's why we say good morning. Today we are going to be engaging with a very rare breed of young people. We don't see many young people being in the space of analyzing the happenings in our country. And today we've got Rebone Lekoena, and I am with my brother still. Lebona Lekoena. I almost always try to replace your surname Lebona with the first letter there with an S, because I've some history with it. Anyway, Rebone, what you are doing here with the current review is not necessarily an interview, but an engagement with people we think are about our age, our peers, around the current topical issues, because we're trying to move away from the sense that politics has always been, or analysis of politics or analysis of things that happen in the country has always been, the terrain of the elderly. We want to become more engaged with these things. So therefore, we're not conducting an interview necessarily with you, but we want to engage with you, want to get the perspective of somebody such as yourself as we conversate. So there's a few things that we'll be touching on. The first of these would be the water situation in most parts of the country, arising from the from the disastrous recent past around the cholera outbreak in the Tshwane area and some parts of the country. We'll be touching on the implications of the EFF student school chapter winning SRC elections. Does that necessarily relate to like a broader societal outlook towards the next year's general elections? We'll be talking about the UN General Assembly, which is taking place right now. We'll be talking about like a variety of these things, and I'm sure like these are things that you've kept your radar on, because I know that you keep your mind and your heart and your eyes where things matter. Lebona, do you perhaps maybe want to start with this conversation in terms of the topics that we've outlined? Your microphone is off.
Okay, my apologies. Good morning to you, my brother. Good morning to our viewers, and good morning to our fellow Rebone Tau. And also, today's Tuesday. It's coming from a long weekend, like you have highlighted earlier on. Today we're going to have a brief but informative discussions. Amongst others, we're going to discuss various issues. We've seen President Cyril Ramaphosa has given a special investigation unit an authorization to investigate the contract which was awarded to controversial businessman Edwin Sodi. You'll remember the 295 million contract from Tshwane Metropolitan Municipality. President Cyril Ramaphosa has given SIU authorization to investigate that contract, which was awarded to Edwin Sodi's company. And also, we're going to discuss the consistent success of EFF Student Command student wing. We've seen in past few days they've won SRC elections in many universities across the nation. So we're going to discuss that and see how are they getting it right, because the POA structures, they're not there, they are losing. So it's one of the issues that we're going to discuss. And also we're going to discuss the Heritage Day and the Tshwane Day. Many people, they have different views about that as to which one should be celebrated. Should we celebrate Heritage Day or should we celebrate Tshwane Day? And also, I apologize. And also we're going to discuss the 78th session of United Nations General Assembly that will take place at United Nations headquarters in New York, because many people believe that the UN General Assembly provides an opportunity for countries to discuss and address global challenges such as climate change, human rights, and international security, as well as sustainable development. And also, the other issue that we're going to discuss is we've seen that Dr. Mbuzeni Ndlozi, who's EFF member of parliament, has won a defamation rape case against him. Remember, previously he was accused of a rape. Then we've seen that the outcomes of the court indicated that he is innocent, and as a result, he sued the person who accused him of such allegations. And the other thing that we're going to discuss is EFF motion of no confidence against Free State Premier Mxolisi Dukwana. Remember earlier this year during the funeral of the late Free State MEC of Education, MEC Ndadete Mahwe, it was reported that the provincial government used 3.5 million for the burial of Tate Mahwe. So the EFF has submitted motion of no confidence at the Free State Legislature. We'll see how that goes. And also the last issue, which is interesting that we're going to discuss, is the ANC response on the ongoing media reports concerning much having executive mayor Thando Kalipa. We've seen last week court gave service providers an authority to attach municipal assets, because service providers took municipality to court after they claimed that municipalities are refusing to pay for the services that they rendered in that municipality. So we've seen also mayor was accused of, or there's also allegations of corruption against the mayor. We'll see what will be, or what will the ANC says about that. We are yet to hear the ANC's perspective, which is the party that deployed Thando Kalipa in that municipality. So as the week goes and as the week unfolds, we'll see. Will the ANC respond to that? We are yet to hear the ANC's perspective on that matter. Those are the issues that we're going to discuss, and many others today in our show, in our third episode of The Current View.
Thank you, Lebona. Now, Rebone Town, the issue with the SIU proclamation into the investigation, being involved in quite a number of this kind of contracts which don't complete. The other one being the one in Paris, the prison which was also not completed, being built there. Do you think we'll ever see results, or Mr. Sodi being prosecuted successfully for this kind of things? And not necessarily just him, but all the contractors that get involved in projects that they do not finish, or they have shoddy work around those kind of contracts.
Good morning to you, and good morning to the viewers who are following from different social media accounts. I think the issue of Thamsanqa, while yes, we know that the president has issued a proclamation on the SIU to investigate what has happened, the tender, but it's unfortunate that due to this current event where people died, Thamsanqa has always had a problem of water. I can tell you, if you have interacted with people from Thamsanqa who were born in Thamsanqa, who, let's say, they're in their 40s, you even check their teeth. They tell you a story of the crisis of the water in Hammanskraal. So this problem of water in Hammanskraal did not start even now after Sodi getting the tender, as it is alleged. It has always been there, even under the ANC-led government. We can go to even the Giyani water project, which we know that up to now, it has gone over 1 billion, that water project. But when it started, it was not even close to 1 billion. Even now, it's still not yet resolved. There's still crisis. You know, there's a new minister, Thamsanqa Tu. We've seen him go to Guyana. And every time the service providers involved, because if you are taking your bill to 1 billion, that money is because of service providers. I remember, for an example, even in the Guyana project, you know, those who were subcontracted were not even being paid. So they were saying tools down, you know. I even wrote an article actually a few years back, you know, when I looked at the water crisis in South Africa. You can go to even Kwagga, because I think I made reference to Kwagga in the Free State in that article. I made reference to what is known today as Makhanda. Makhanda has got a serious water crisis in that community, which we saw even in the court. You know, a few years back, I was doing some research and trying to understand the Communist Party of China, you know, how it operates. Even business people who we could say probably are members of the Communist Party, they go through political school so that they have the moral and ethics, you know, when it comes to business. And in South Africa, those business people who are associated with certain, I mean, there's always been allegations of people being associated with politicians. They are there just to make money. They don't have that revolutionary conscience, you know, and how do they conduct business in terms of delivering on time, but also making sure that even the prices, you know, they don't escalate the prices, you know. I mean, we know that, for an example, the same Sodi, he's got a court case with the expelled Secretary General of the ANC, who has recently formed his own political party, going to the 2024 general election. So it will be very interesting, you know, that this Sodi character, there's been allegations of him also having a relationship, by the way, with the deputy president of the ANC. We've read in some of the media houses, you know, in the past a few weeks, you know, articles coming around the lifestyle of the deputy president of the ANC. So there's a lot of things that are really disturbing, you know, that South Africans in general have to be subjected to ANC internal politics, service delivery.
You are also, I think you are saying one of the things that can be blamed is lack of revolutionary consciousness around, you know, with contractors in particular, but I suppose that extends to society in general. Do you think we are too late to try and inculcate the sort of ethos that the Communist Party of China inculcates in society for, for business people in particular who conduct such important work that has a direct impact on the quality of life of the people?
You know, where we are as a nation, it's a sad situation, you know, and it will need strong men and strong women, you know, who are brave also to say this is where we're taking the country. But when you look at the current leadership across different political parties, the question is that, do we have such in this country? Because the problem that we have, it's lifestyle. We have leaders who are preoccupied with Gucci's and Louis Vuittons and vis-a-vis. We're still waiting to see if President Ramaphosa is going to do a lifestyle audit on his own cabinet. Because these things they have to do with their lifestyle audit, because people are living beyond their means, you know, vis-a-vis their salary, vis-a-vis their monthly expenses, and vis-a-vis the lifestyle that they live. So it needs people who are not preoccupied by opulence, but people who understand the revolution.
Yeah. Lebona, want to sneak in a little bit?
Yes, and also I'd like to, when you look at, I know Rebone discussed this issue of SIU I want to ask you, Rebone, do you think it's appropriate for Sodi to be investigated alone? I mean, there are a lot of contracts that were awarded illegally. What is your view about that? Do you think SIU is doing justice to investigate him alone? I know there are other cases that are under investigation at the moment, but one can say they are ignored. What is your view about that?
You see, that's why when I spoke about this in the beginning, I made reference to the Guyana Water Project. I made reference to Rooiwal Water Crisis. I've made reference to Makanda Water Crisis. Not react and wait for people to die, so that it becomes because now it's a crime scene because people have died, So if people don't die, then it's okay. Like, look at the Guyana project when it started. And where it is today, over R1 billion has been spent, and that project is still not yet finished. It's so unfortunate, that people of Guyana have to suffer in the manner that they're suffering. People of towns like in Kwagwa have to suffer in the way that they're suffering. So, and you see, while also on the other hand, you have the issue of climate change, which is going to have an impact on the water, crisis in this country. So we need a government that is really going to be decisive and not be factional when it deals with issues of corruption.
And Rebone, I want to.
Okay, Rebone, while we're at that, do you think it is still relevant for government to issue tenders, or government supposed to hire permanent employees who will do or who will work on these projects? Because it seems like this issue of tenders of projects, it becomes a problem because it's either you'll find a corruption has occurred there, or on the other hand, some of the projects are not complete. So what do you think it will be the best strategy that government should implement in order to avoid this kind of things, the corruption, the incomplete projects, and so forth and so on? What do you think it is the relevant or the good strategy that can be implemented by the government in order to avoid these things to happen? So I'm talking about corruption, incomplete projects, and others.
I think it was last week I was listening to the news, and the Minister of Public Works, Sihle was in Northwest. He was nearly attacked by service providers, those ones of the tenders, which is very unfortunate. And he had to flee the place wherever he was. It was an embrace or whatever that it was, a meeting. We have what we call the National Youth Service. A few years back, with a friend who is now a minister, we were actually writing that document, the National Youth Service. And we were arguing that this document, National Youth Service, must be placed at the Department of Defense, because Department of Defense has got the infrastructure to host the National Youth Service. It goes back to what you are saying. Then you'll have plumbers, you'll have different youth, being given different skills, so that there's no need for certain projects to actually have tenders, You can have young people. I mean, if you look at the youth unemployment in this country, with that project of youth service, instead of this nonsense of EPWP, of people picking up papers, you're not getting any skill there, because with this youth service, then you can even get a certificate, there's issues of, like, for example, potholes. There's a lot of problems in this country. And a lot of young people who need the skills. And if you in-house this as defense working with public works, there's a lot of things that the government can do, but also fighting the high unemployment rate amongst young people, giving them the skills, making sure that they're certificated, because some, when they leave there, they can do that thing for a year. After that, they can establish themselves and start even to work in communities outside of working for government, but even within private sector, developing a country. And that's what we're lacking right now, that developmental country.
And Rebone, I want to link this to one of the suggested topics that we're going to have here. There was, I think last week, a motion of no confidence against the Free State Premier, sponsored by the EFF, relating to the funeral cost of the late MEC Tate Mahwe. Now, I want to link it to this discussion in this way, that political parties must also have a responsibility to take government into account, not necessarily by grandstanding, because I'm trying to suggest that if for example a political party says there is injustice in in Tshwane against the people of Hammanskraal, in particular because of water issues, the motion of no confidence must therefore be passed against this government that is failing to give people water, not necessarily this kind of motions that are related, sometimes to what some can call grandstanding. Do you think that sort of approach can make sense?
I mean, true, we need accountability and transparency. And I mean, I like when you make reference to the issue of Hammanskraal. And as I said earlier on, the ANC had been in government until 2016, when they lost in those elections. And the water crisis was still there under the ANC-led government. And only now when people die, you have the ANC now being the voice of reason and wanting to talk bad of how the DA coalition is so bad for the people of Hammanskraal. When the secretary of the ANC in Tshwane is actually born and bred in Hammanskraal. He knows this problem, but people play politics, and that's the unfortunate part. But we need, yes, a vibrant, whether legislature, vibrant council, the parliament itself, where leaders are held accountable, but also those who are holding people accountable must be honest themselves, and not just do this, as you say, by grandstanding because they want votes and so forth. They must really be genuine about these issues, because, I mean, if you look at this, even this coalition arrangements that are taking place, like for example, you come to Johannesburg, the EFF is in coalition with the ANC, you get me? Then you go to Free State, there's then fights, like there's no consistency. It's like, when you choose this grouping, things happen like this, it's not really about the people, it's not about making people to account for the wrongdoings. I've not followed in detail the issue of the funeral, but what I know, where it's not actual money that is allocated in most cases. Different departments will then make a certain contribution. Maybe I'll give an example. The Department of Public Works will say, okay, we'll give toilets and maybe catering. This department will do this, and so forth. Because I remember with the death of this famous musician from KZN, Edwin Sodi was late husband. There was an issue around that time, and I remember then they had to unpack it. That actually the municipality of eThekwini contributed with this and this and that. So I've not followed in detail in terms of the late MEC's funeral. What is it that, in terms of the finer details, what was contributed, because yes, we'll get the figure out in the public domain, but there's also finer details. Like any budget, it's got what we call a detailed budget,
Yeah.
So then we'll have to know in terms of the detail vis-a-vis, if we know for the Mandela's funeral, how money was looted, So those are some of the things, that one will have to really go deep and check if prices were taken up, unnecessary, by those who were service providers. But also it goes back to what we were saying earlier on about government doing things for themselves and stop outsourcing, because when you outsource, you are spending a lot of money, which is not necessary. This three codes argument, because sometimes you can get one person to bring three codes with the different prices, and you know that, okay, this is what we're going for,
I think you are right, because funeral services of such important people, they tend to attract a lot of people. So services provided for those kind of funeral services may of course be to an extent where when a figure is mentioned, you immediately think that, wow, that is massive for a funeral, not considering the scale and the scope necessarily of the services that need to be provided. Maybe Lebona, you want to come in there, because I do think that 3.6 million for a funeral service, taking into account the number of services and the people who attended the funeral service, it may not necessarily be an extreme figure, but I could be wrong.
What I've noticed in the past they say 3.5 million. It's partially quite a lot. First, we need to establish what was it for. Was it necessary? Because those are the things that an ordinary citizen would ask themselves, that why did the government spend on a single funeral? Because at the end of the day, we are living in a country where high unemployment rate it's very high, and when you look into that they spend such amount of money on a single funeral, that money could have done certain things. It's quite a lot, but people will have different views about it. They will say, no, these are the cost for the funeral. This is how we came to the total amount of that money, but it's still a lot. That's my view. It's a lot of money, but we hope that in future this will not happen again, because we can't spend, the government cannot spend so much money on a single funeral, where else we have a lot of young people who are living in poverty, a lot of young people who are not working, but on the other hand, the government is continuing to spend such amount of money on a single funeral. Is totally wrong, and let's hope that these are the things that government will fix in the near future, so that history doesn't repeat itself.
Moving away from all the dark things.
But can I come in there? Because that
Yes.
statement, because you must remember that there's money that is allocated, and certain money is not for, while we note that the unemployment rate is high, right? While we note that the economy is not doing well, but some of them, because that's what I'm saying, that you need to go into detail and check which department contributed what in this 3.5 million. And because sometimes they don't even give hard cash. From when I even did research on that funeral of the late artist, or from the husband of Tshwane Tu. This is money that you can't move it to create jobs. It's money that is allocated. But what we can say, they need to be considerate of spending, but also with the public. For an example, let's ask ourselves, with the late Prince Butelis, who got a category 1 of a state funeral, it's going to be more than this 3.5. So we really need to sometimes remember that when budgets are allocated to different departments, not everything is to create jobs. Our biggest problem actually even in this country is the wage bill is too high. Most of the money goes to salaries, more than even implementing in terms of service delivery. That is the biggest problem. And once we can sort out the wage bill and the ghost workers that we are aware of, allegations that have been made, even in the same province of Free State, there were allegations of ghost workers, even at some point, I think, the Rooiwal Municipality. Once those problems can be resolved, then we can see, because ghost workers vis-a-vis people who are unemployed, that is something else, because that means they've deprived young people jobs and people are ghost workers. I can tell you right now, in Northern Cape, there's a provincial leader of the ANC who was reported to be getting 2 salaries, which is very worrying, you know. I mean, that guy is taking a job for someone else because he's a ghost worker in the department, as is alleged, of agriculture. I'll end there for now.
I think that is clear, and I want to move on to the UN General Assembly, the 78th session. I saw the Minister, I think, of Foreign Affairs in Burkina Faso last week, making a very fiery speech there, speaking, you know, the kind of truths that we haven't had in a long time, you know, against the powers that be in the West or in the world. Do you think that government of Burkina Faso, you know, considering how it came about, will experience isolation from everybody?
You know, the problem that is happening in West Africa, not only Burkina Faso, Niger, and so forth. The question is that who's behind all these coups, and who are they going to benefit these coups at the end of the day? We know, for an example, there was the Africa-Russia summit that took place. Immediately after the Africa-Russia summit, the president of Burkina Faso, the interim, met with the Minister of Defense in Russia to discuss from a bilateral point of view. It's good. I always say UN General Assembly is just people grandstanding speeches. I mean, Mugabe used to make the best speeches. You know, we all used to look forward to listening to the late president of Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe. But if you go to Zimbabwe and look at the conditions that the people are living under, it's a contradiction to what he would say at the United Nations, you know. If you look at the number of Zimbabweans in South Africa who have fled Zimbabwe for economic reasons, it's a contradiction of what these people will say at the United Nations General Assembly. So people just gather at the United General Assembly. Some even just go there for shopping because it's very nice to do shopping in New York, you know. But the reality of the matter, you still have the United Security Council, which has not been transformed. And there's no political will, you know, so that the United Security Council reflects the world order of today, you know. African countries still don't have powers to veto, you know, we're on rotation, you know, as African countries, you know, which is sad, you know. Our own friends who are progressive, the Chinese, the Russians, who have got permanent seats there, don't even lobby for us and pushing for that resolution to have a permanent seat. So Africa, unfortunately, can have presidents going there, speaking nice English, sounding all revolutionary because they're insulting the West. But the question is that it's fine, insult the West, but where to for your country? If you're going to the East, how are the people of your country going to benefit? Because we find ourselves in between this war of the West and the East as Africans. And that, I can tell you one thing, every country's foreign policy is defined by their national interest. And if an African country does not advance its own national interest, we'll be where we are today, or even in a worse situation 20 years from now on. You know, some of my friends, when we have these discussions, one of my friends always says, France, I'll give an example about South Africa. He always says South Africa needs to behave like a slave queen. You go with the one who gives you the best, and the best is for your people, not for you and your friends. So Burkina Faso, for now, we can measure it after 5 years to see whatever that they're saying. Are they living by the revolutionary spirit of the great Thomas Sankara? Because Thomas Sankara was the last revolutionary leader Burkina Faso had, and he was practical. And when I say he was practical, for example, he even changed the cars that were driven by his ministers from Mercedes-Benz to a Mini. He encouraged local, clothing, what do they call them? The tailors and people, fashion designers, that people must buy local branded clothes, you know, in Burkina Faso. I've not heard that from this guy, you know, so I'm still trying to assess his administration. Yes, he's very young, 35 years, which is a good thing, but does he have the spirit of Thomas Sankara? I don't know. We'll see.
Before we let you go, Rebone, I think let's just talk about the EFF SC as performance in the SRC elections in all the universities and the TVET colleges. That victory, does it necessarily mean that generally young people are gravitating more towards the policies of the EFF, and we will see that in elections? Or is it just a question of mobilization in campuses that, you know, the EFF is performing the way it is in those campuses?
Go and check EFF since its formation. It's growing each and every elections. EFF has not declined, even in the last elections. The problem that when you talk to people, they have this notion that EFF must win an award for us to say EFF is doing well. But EFF is growing in terms of the numbers that it's getting in every election, right? The student command, which is very fine, because you have the EFF student command, you have DASU. Within the ANC, you have what we call the Progressive Youth Alliance, which is 4 organizations, you know, involved in this thing. But unfortunately, they are so weak. Youth League, SASCO, ICL, COSAS, all combined, all 4 of them, they've been beaten by one organization of students, the EFF Student Command. It's because young people can relate. This proves that the ANC indeed is for pensioners. It's voted by old people, and the EFF is voted by young people since its formation, because it was formed by former leaders of the ANC Youth League, you know. So the result of the matter is that we're going to see, going to the next elections again, the growth of the EFF, not a decline. Those students that are voting on campuses, and I've just not followed the case of University of Pretoria, which is very interesting, you know, that the EFF student command won there, but the university is rejecting those outcomes. One who has to also follow what is happening at the University of Pretoria. You know, that the extreme Afrikaners don't want to be led by the extreme, you know, radical Africans, you know. So it's a very interesting thing playing itself at the University of Pretoria. But the PYA needs to do a reflection. SASCO needs to do a reflection. Is it still relevant in terms of its politics? You know, does it speak? Because you see, you know, you look at right now, the Youth League has got newly elected leadership, and the only thing they've done since they came into power, insult ministers. This minister must go, themselves, you see. So as long as they become a mouthpiece of some individual in that officials of the ANC, because it's clear that the Youth League is a mouthpiece of the Secretary General of the ANC. You remember the issue of Pravin started with the Secretary General of the ANC, and then later the Youth League started speaking about it when the Secretary General of the ANC started retreating. So those are some of the things that the PYA needs to ask themselves if they're still relevant, to the youth of this country, or their time has come to an end, and we need to allow new babies that are born to grow.
I'm framing that question the way I did because, I've seen a fluctuation, like it sort of fluctuates. It's not always consistent. The organization that wins SRC elections. I think in 1 year, SASCO was overwhelming in its victory in most campuses. And this year we see it's the EFF. That's why I'm asking if it is a question of maybe mobilization at particular campuses on a particular year, or does it necessarily reflect the general trend that the youth would progress towards? But I hear you. I think you're making a good point when you say that you must look at the growth trajectory of the EFF since its formation. I'm just not sure if we can say that the campuses, the voting in campuses reflects what we may see next year. And we were going to be joined by the provincial secretary of the ANC Youth League for another section of this. I think he would have made like a good point, but I see he has left. I think he'll rejoin later.
Listen, for me, just to come in a bit, even those campuses, it's just that this thing, I like us to be scientific, and I've not really did a thorough analysis on this. But EFF Student Command has been winning campuses since its formation. It's the only people that are giving the PYA a headache outside of all the youth formations that are there, whether TASU, whether the IFP Youth Brigade, I don't know what is their student thing, adversity. But the EFF is the only people that is actually giving the PYA a headache. They are toe-to-toe with them. Whether this year there can be a decline or what, but we need to check in terms of, say, in the last 5 years, how many guys have won and what is the percentage, vis-a-vis PYA, vis-a-vis thing in the past 5 years, so that we become scientific. But the reality of the matter is, I'm saying that every elections, the race is between these two. And this two, the other one has got 3 sister parties working with them very close. The other one is alone. That must tell you something.
You are right. Like they are ganging up on an infant, yet they are being beaten. And I think also the resource available for them is not Maegra, but they are suffering at the hands of that EFF school chapter or student command. Lebona, maybe before we conclude this thing, anything that you'd like to say there?
Yes, I wanted to chip in there and to have Rebone's view about this the continuous victory of the EFF student command. Do you think the PYA is still relevant to students, particularly in institution of higher learning? Do you really think that it is still relevant? Do students still believe in it? And what do you think it should be done by the PYA in order to gain control of universities across the country? What is your view about that?
I wrote the book, The Rise and Fall of the Youth League, and my argument has always been, and it cuts across, because I've spoken to some of the leaders within the PYF. I think, let's say, former leaders who at the time were leading. We say to them, you can't have a COSAS, for an example, of 1979, still operating like 1979 in 2023. Things have changed. You need to transform yourself. You need to move with the time so that you are relevant to my 2000. People don't care about slogans and revolutionary songs about Tambo. It's good that there's that history, but that history belongs somewhere. People don't eat ideas. People don't eat history, and you have a situation where SASCO itself has failed to evolve over the years. And I make an example. You have a young person who was born, let's say, in 1994 or 1995, who has never lived in the township, who their parents were fortunate to move in the suburban areas immediately after we got democracy. This child has never gone to a school in the township. This child is not studying through NEFSAS. But this child has got one problem, actually two problems: getting the best accommodation address and getting a parking spot because their parents can afford to buy them cars. And if you have a SASCO that does not deal with all different students who come from different class societies, then you have a problem, because you need SASCO to evolve to show that, because SASCO has produced people who become academics, some of them are senior government officials who are former leaders of SASCO. Their kids are not experiencing the same challenges as they experience. So you can't then want to fight the struggle as you were fighting it in 1997 today. And you see the EFF, I was talking to a cousin of mine over the weekend, and one thing I think he said to me, which was very interesting. He says to me, EFF made education very fashionable. Look at Julius Malema. Julius Malema says himself, when I was in the ANC, I was taught alcohol. But when he goes to EFF, in the ANC, he was known as woodwork again, in terms of his matric results. But when he goes to the EFF, he goes to varsity, even now I think he's at vets. And my cousin was saying, those are things that appeal to us as young people when we see EFF leaders showing that education is very important. So it's easy for even young people to relate. Not that in the ANC there are no people who are not educated, but it's just that it's that the ANC Youth League or the PY does not have a strategy to promote itself as a brand, because this is a contested terrain. If you have Coke and Fanta and Stony, I must promote Stone and tell you of the nice things that Stony can give you, but we're all Coca-Cola because we're all black people. The EFF is a child of the ANC.
So in other words, while we wrap up, when we Rebone, you're saying the PYA, they don't consider the students' needs, or we can say they lost touch with students' needs, because you're saying they are not. They still think we are there in the 1976. All they know is to feed student history, and students, they don't want history. They want the things that are happening now.
And you see the other thing, what you're saying, just to add, SASCO and the PYA are more privileged because this is an ANC-led government. They have access to these ministers. But the difference with the EFF Shon Command, they're not in government. So they can criticize what SASCO is failing to do to hold the ANC-led government accountable for the challenges that face also students. Because most of them are enjoying having that close proximity to leadership. I'll give an example. Every year in January, the ANC has got an event, which is called the January 8. During that time, you've got students across the country traveling to different varsities to go and register preparing for the academic year. EFF You'll find them, I know, for example, at Park Station, where they will even be there to assist the students that will be arriving late there, traveling by bus, to make sure that, because you must remember that you have someone coming from maybe Limpopo or KwaZulu-Natal coming to Joburg for the first time. They are at risk in terms of their safety, but EFF Student Command makes sure that they are there to collect those students, to make sure that they have an easy way going to campus. And these ones are busy running behind ANC leaders there by that thing called January 8, forgetting that they've got a constituency that is new, that they need to capture them and show them as they arrive that we're here, we're going to be your voice.
Rebone, thank you very much, man, for engaging with us. This was quite very informative. We'd like to do this again another time on a number of other discussions that we can take on. And I think a lot of us are inspired by young people such as yourself, man, who have seen that it's possible to move the eldership away from these key responsibilities. Young people are taking up the space. Thank you very much, Rebone, but thank you very much, Rebone.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed the session. And yeah, to see you guys again.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We will be having another session just now with the Provincial Secretary of the ANC Youth League, Bangani Maibuye. Yeah, let's just hang on a few seconds. Bangani will join us right now.